What happens when a simple insect bite on a bachelorette trip turns your own body against you? Not slowly. Not metaphorically. I'm talking full body mutation, acid vomit, and a basement full of pulsating egg sacs. This is Bite, the 2015 Canadian body horror that takes a bad hangover and turns it into a waking nightmare of transformation. No hidden twists. No secret meanings. Just pure, gooey, Cronenberg-style descent into something not human anymore. Today I'm breaking down every gruesome stage of this transformation, from the first bump to the final, buzzing scream. If you've got a strong stomach, stick around. Let's get into it. The film opens not with horror, but with the bright, sun-soaked energy of a bachelorette getaway. Casey, our protagonist, is a young woman on the verge of marriage. She's surrounded by her closest friends, Jill, the responsible one, and Kirsten, the wild card, at a tropical resort that seems designed for Instagram posts and regrettable decisions. The three women are celebrating Casey's last days of single life, and the air is thick with laughter, cheap cocktails, and the kind of easy intimacy that comes from years of friendship. Casey is engaged to Jared, a decent, earnest man waiting back home in their modest city apartment. She loves him genuinely, and the film establishes early that this is not a woman looking for an escape from commitment. She is happy. She is excited. She is ready for the next chapter. The only hint of tension is a brief, awkward video call with Jared in which Casey, slightly tipsy, jokes about the local insect life and Jared expresses a very reasonable concern about tropical diseases. Casey dismisses it with a laugh. She will not be laughing for long. The fateful moment arrives during a day trip to a secluded lagoon, the kind of hidden paradise that tourists whisper about but rarely find. The water is impossibly blue, surrounded by dense jungle foliage. Casey, adventurous and maybe a little reckless, decides to swim deeper into the lagoon than the others. She finds a small, hidden grotto, a pocket of still water fed by a trickling waterfall. It is beautiful and utterly isolated. And it is here that something bites her. The moment is subtle, a sharp sting on the back of her calf, nothing more. She slaps at the water, sees nothing, and swims back to the group, already forgetting the incident. On the boat ride back, she shows Jill the bite mark, a small, raised red bump, no bigger than a mosquito bite. Jill shrugs it off. Kirsten makes a joke about mutant jungle spiders. They laugh. The scene fades on their smiling faces, the last moment of genuine peace Casey will ever experience. Back home, the tone shifts immediately. The bright, warm colors of the resort are replaced by the gray, muted palette of the city. Casey and Jared's apartment is modest but comfortable, the kind of place young couples furnish with IKEA furniture and hope. Jared is attentive and loving, but there's a subtle tension underneath. The wedding is approaching, and money is tight. Casey's mother is, we learn through phone conversations, overbearing and critical, a woman who has made Casey feel inadequate her entire life. The bite, now a few days old, has not healed. If anything, it looks worse. The small bump has grown into an angry, red welt with dark tendrils spreading outward, like veins becoming visible under bruised skin. Casey hides it from Jared, covering it with a bandage and claiming it's nothing. She is not a hypochondriac. She is a woman who doesn't want to cause a fuss. But the audience can see what she cannot. Something is very, very wrong. The first significant change is sensory. Casey begins to hear things she shouldn't be able to hear. The hum of the refrigerator becomes deafening. The dripping of a leaky faucet in the bathroom sounds like gunshots. She can hear the neighbors arguing through the walls, their muffled voices suddenly crisp and clear. Light becomes painful. She starts wearing sunglasses indoors, closing curtains, retreating into dim corners of the apartment. Her eyes, when we see them in close-up, have taken on a faint, almost imperceptible iridescence, a shimmer that catches the light in ways human eyes should not. Jared notices her odd behavior, the sensitivity, the irritability, but he attributes it to post-vacation exhaustion and wedding stress. He tries to be supportive. He makes her soup. He tells her to rest. He has no idea that the woman he is about to marry is changing on a fundamental, biological level. The physical transformation escalates with the relentless momentum of a nightmare. The bite wound on Casey's calf begins to ooze. Not blood, not pus, but a clear, viscous fluid that smells faintly sweet and deeply wrong. When she peels back the bandage one evening, she sees that the wound has opened into a small, circular cavity, and inside that cavity, something is moving. The film does not shy away from this moment. The practical effects, achieved on a modest budget, are genuinely disturbing. The flesh around the wound has become translucent, revealing a dark, pulsating mass beneath the skin. Casey, horrified but unable to look away, prods at it with a finger. The mass pulses in response. She screams, and Jared comes running. By the time he arrives, she has covered the wound again and is insisting, through gritted teeth, that she is fine. But she is not fine. She is incubating something. The relationship dynamics begin to fracture under the strain of Casey's secret. Jill and Kirsten, still riding the high of the trip, come over for a dinner that quickly becomes uncomfortable. Casey, now intensely sensitive to smells, finds the aroma of cooked meat nauseating. She picks at her food while her friends exchange worried glances. Kirsten, never one for subtlety, asks Casey directly if she's pregnant. Casey snaps at her with a ferocity that shocks the room. The old Casey would have laughed it off. This new Casey is volatile, unpredictable, her emotional regulation crumbling along with her body. Jill tries to mediate, but Casey retreats to the bathroom. There, locked in the small, tiled space, she examines the wound again. It has grown. The cavity is deeper now, and the dark mass inside has developed what looks like a membrane, a thin, translucent layer that stretches and contracts like a breathing lung. Casey, in a moment of desperate denial, attempts to cut it out with a pair of nail scissors. The pain is immediate and blinding. The wound sprays the clear fluid across the bathroom mirror, and the membrane retracts deeper into her flesh, as if the thing inside has sensed the threat and retreated. Casey collapses onto the bathroom floor, trembling, and when she looks at her reflection in the smeared mirror, she sees something in her own eyes that wasn't there before, a predatory stillness, a cold, alien patience. She is not just carrying this thing. She is becoming it. The following days are a blur of worsening symptoms. Casey's sense of hearing sharpens to an unbearable degree. She can hear Jared's heartbeat from across the room, the rush of blood through his veins, the wet click of his swallowing. She finds herself fixating on these sounds, disturbed and fascinated in equal measure. Her appetite changes completely. Food she once loved tastes like ash. But raw meat, a package of ground beef in the refrigerator, a raw steak left to defrost on the counter, smells intoxicating. She catches herself one afternoon with her face inches from a package of raw chicken, inhaling deeply, her mouth watering. The rational part of her mind screams in revulsion, but the rational part of her mind is losing ground to something older, something instinctual. She begins to secrete a thin, sticky substance from her pores, a residue that burns slightly when she touches it. She discovers this by accident when she handles one of Jared's shirts and later notices the fabric has been eaten through, tiny holes dissolved by contact with her skin. She throws the shirt away and tells Jared she spilled bleach. The lies are piling up, and so is the evidence. The elderly landlady who lives in the apartment below them becomes an unexpected variable. Her name is Mrs. Kennedy, and she is the kind of woman who notices everything. She has lived in the building for decades, and she knows its rhythms, its sounds. She has been hearing strange noises from Casey and Jared's apartment at night, scratching, skittering, a wet, clicking sound she cannot identify. She begins to watch Casey more closely, her suspicion growing. In a lesser film, the nosy neighbor would be comic relief. Here, she is a looming threat, a witness who could expose Casey before the transformation is complete. The first moment of genuine horror that announces this film means business involves the apartment's plumbing. Casey, in a fugue state she barely remembers, vomits into the kitchen sink. The vomit is not normal stomach content. It is a thick, gelatinous substance that glows faintly green and clings to the stainless steel like living slime. When she turns on the faucet to wash it away, the substance reacts violently with the water, foaming and hissing. The drain clogs immediately. The sink fills with bubbling, acidic foam that eats through the rubber seal around the drain and begins dripping into the cabinet below. Casey stares at this with a detachment that is more terrifying than panic. The thing inside her is not just gestating. It is actively modifying her body to serve its needs. And one of those needs appears to be reproduction. The egg sacs arrive about 2/3 of the way through the film, and they are the point of no return. Casey wakes one night to a sensation of intense pressure in her abdomen. She stumbles to the bathroom, and what follows is a birthing scene that rivals anything in the body horror canon. She does not lay eggs in the traditional sense. The process is messier, more organic, more disturbing. From the wound on her leg, and then from other orifices and fissures that have opened across her body, she expels dozens of gelatinous, translucent sacs, each one containing a writhing, larval creature. The sacs are sticky, adhering to the bathroom tiles, the bathtub, the ceiling. Casey, exhausted and trembling, looks at the chamber she has created and feels, horrifyingly, a surge of maternal instinct. She strokes one of the sacs, and the larva inside pulses in response, recognizing its mother. The line between woman and hive has been permanently crossed. Jared, who has been staying at a friend's place for a few nights after a particularly explosive argument with Casey, returns home to find the apartment transformed. The curtains are drawn tight. The air is thick with humidity and a sweet, rotting smell. A thin layer of the sticky secretion coats every surface, like a nest. He calls out for Casey, his voice trembling. The woman who emerges from the bedroom is not his fiancée. Casey's body has elongated. Her limbs are thinner, longer, and she moves with a skittering, insectile gait that is profoundly inhuman. Her skin has a waxy, translucent quality, and her eyes are now fully iridescent, compound-like, reflecting light in 1,000 tiny points. Her voice, when she speaks, is layered with a buzzing undertone, as if a second set of vocal cords has developed. She tells Jared she is still Casey. She tells him she loves him. She asks him to join her, to become part of the hive. The offer is, in its own twisted way, genuine. Casey believes she has evolved. She believes the old human existence was a larval stage, and that this new form is a gift. Jared, to his credit as a human being, runs for the door. It is locked. Casey has sealed the exits with her secretions, which harden into a resin-like substance when exposed to air. The apartment is now a nest, and Jared is trapped inside it. The landlady, Mrs. Kennedy, makes her move. She has been documenting the strange sounds and the increasingly foul odor emanating from the apartment above. When she hears Jared's muffled screams through the floorboards, she calls the police. But the police are, in the tradition of horror films, too slow. Mrs. Kennedy takes matters into her own hands, climbing the stairs with a flashlight and a stubbornness born of decades of dealing with difficult tenants. She finds the apartment door sealed shut with the resin. She pounds on it. From inside, she hears a sound that will haunt her for the rest of her life. A wet, chittering chorus of dozens of tiny voices, all mimicking cases, all saying, "It's okay, we are fine in here." Inside the apartment, Jared is fighting for his life. The egg sacs have begun to hatch. The larval creatures are small, no larger than a human hand, but they are fast and numerous. They swarm across the floor and walls like cockroaches, their tiny mandibles clicking. Jared, armed with a kitchen knife and sheer desperation, fights his way toward the fire escape. But Casey is faster. She pins him against the wall with a strength that should not be possible for her frame. She is no longer hiding her transformation. She speaks to him softly, describing the beauty of the hive, the peace of surrendering individuality, the ecstasy of becoming part of something larger. She presses her lips to his, and the kiss is not romantic. It is a transfer. Jared feels something enter his mouth, something small and wriggling, and he understands with horror that she has just implanted an egg inside him. He breaks free, spitting and gagging, and smashes through the bathroom window, tumbling onto the fire escape and down into the alley below. The final confrontation is not between Casey and Jared, but between Casey and the remnants of her former self. Jill and Kirsten, having been unable to reach Casey for days, arrive at the apartment building at the same time as the police. Mrs. Kennedy lets them in. What they find upstairs is a full-blown hive. The walls are coated in organic matter. The egg sacs are everywhere, in various stages of development. And at the center of it all, suspended from the ceiling in a cocoon of her own making, is Casey. She is barely recognizable. Her body has fully committed to the insect form. She descends from the ceiling as the police open fire. Bullets tear through the larval creatures, splattering them against the walls in bursts of green fluid. Casey, wounded but still moving, makes a final, desperate lunge for Jill. There is a flicker of recognition in her compound eyes, a brief, heartbreaking moment where the old Casey surfaces, just long enough to hesitate. And in that hesitation, Jill does what she has to do. She grabs a fallen officer's gun and shoots Casey in the chest. The bullet hits the central mass where Casey's heart used to be. Casey crumples, her body dissolving rapidly into a pool of the clear, viscous fluid that has been leaking from her since the beginning. The hive, severed from its queen, begins to die. The larval creatures stop moving. The egg sacs deflate. The apartment, once a living nest, becomes a tomb. The film's epilogue is deliberately ambiguous and deeply unsettling. Jared, who survived the fall and the forced implantation, is in a hospital bed. He has been quarantined, his condition unexplained by baffled doctors. The cameras show him through a plastic isolation curtain. His skin has started to take on a faint, waxy sheen. His eyes, when he opens them, catch the light in a way they didn't before. And from somewhere deep inside his abdomen, visible as a faint movement beneath the hospital gown, something pulses. The cycle is not broken. It has simply found a new host. The final shot is of the tropical lagoon where the story began. The water is still. The jungle is silent. A dragonfly skims across the surface, its wings catching the sun. And then another. And another. Hundreds of them, rising from the water like a living mist. The implication is clear. Casey was not the first, and she will not be the last. The bite was never an accident. It was an invitation. And somewhere, on some other beach, another swimmer is about to accept it without even knowing. Bite is a film that understands something essential about body horror. The most terrifying transformations are not the ones that turn us into monsters, but the ones that remind us how fragile our humanity really is. Casey's descent is horrifying not because she becomes something alien, but because she embraces it. The Hive offers her something her human life never could: purpose, belonging, a role in a system larger than herself. And in the end, the tragedy is not that she dies. The tragedy is that part of her didn't want to come back. If you have a strong stomach and a taste for independent horror that punches far above its budget, Bite deserves a place on your watch list. Just maybe don't plan any tropical vacations right after.